On June 24, 2016, in Nataliya Beach on the island of Fiji, a local fisherman made a gruesome discovery. Floating in the waves inside a bundle were a pair of feet. It was widely talked about amongst the residents that a couple had gone missing only a week before. Could this be connected to their mysterious disappearance? Who was this victim? And would the monster who murdered and mutilated them ever be caught? Welcome to Shades of Murder. In this podcast, I discuss cases of murder from around the world and throughout history, attempting to unravel the layers of darkness that help make humans into monsters. Please be forewarned that each episode contains specific and at times very graphic and disturbing details of the case. This show is not intended for all audiences, and listener discretion is strongly advised. Paradise. This term conjures up images of white, sandy beaches, crystal blue seas, and lush landscapes in a relaxed, tropical setting, which to many people is the ultimate definition of the term escape. Whether that place is on a vacation bucket list or someone is lucky enough to call such majestic scenery their home, islands are magical, beautiful, full of mystique and ancient wonders. Yet amongst these dreamy destinations of sand, sunshine, and serenity lies a darkness within their vast, dense lands and endless ocean waves. Lurking behind these postcard-worthy beaches, blood is being spilled, and many of these murders are never solved. In this episode, I present to you 2 island murder mysteries. This first case takes place on the tropical island of Fiji. Fiji is an island lover's paradise, the ultimate archipelago, which is a group or chain of islands scattered around a body of water. Fiji includes 330 tiny islands in the South Pacific Ocean, covering over 1.3 million square kilometers. Sitting north of New Zealand and northwest of Australia, with only a 4 to 5 hour flight, it makes for a popular, relatively close vacation spot for residents of these nations. With its breathtaking turquoise waters, white sandy beaches, waterfalls within its mountain peaks, and vibrant island culture, it has long been known as a top global destination. On Friday, June 17, 2016, Yuri Shipulin and Nataliya Gerasimova, Russian nationals who had made the island their new home, were reported missing by a friend and business partner. They left in their vehicle around midday the previous day, but the couple never returned to their farm in the Nosori Highlands of Nadi on the main island of Viti Levu. Reportedly spotted on Danaru Island the day they were last seen, an image of the couple was posted on Facebook smiling, seemingly without a care in the world, enjoying a cocktail together. It was unknown whether anyone else had accompanied them during this outing. Then the couple disappeared without a trace. The police arrived at the couple's farm and spoke to Andrew Lesinenko, the man who had called in the missing couple, who also resided there. When officers interviewed the couple's neighbors, it didn't seem likely that they had left on their own, nor did they have any known enemies. Law enforcement also looked into the possibility that the couple had boarded a yacht or were even hiding somewhere on the island. Detectives from both Lotoka and Nadi worked together, combing the farmlands and beaches in the area, but there were no signs as to where the man and woman had vanished. Andrew Lazanenko told the police that he didn't understand why Yuri and Nataliya had left without telling him, much less where they were headed. I presume that it must have been normal for the couple to share their plans with him, if this had been any cause for concern. He informed investigators that their farm had been suffering badly and they were in serious economic strain, especially after Cyclone Winston had struck, as were many other businesses on the island. Cyclone Winston was the strongest storm in the history of Fiji's recorded storms, with winds upwards of 177 miles per hour. It stole the lives of dozens and destroyed much of the island. Mr. Lazanenko told the officers that the couple was in severe debt and claimed that Yuri had been very depressed since his business had taken a downturn. He also stated that he had planned to return to Russia since the farm hadn't improved much. Due to the investigation into their disappearance, however, his passport was seized by the police, which prevented him from leaving the island. Meanwhile, the police were on the lookout for a gray metallic Land Cruiser with the registration plate Pilot. At the time, a helicopter was not employed to search the vast lands, nor was an island-wide search being performed. It was believed that the local police were doing all they could to find the couple, but they were faced with limited resources. The police sent an expedited request to the couple's phone carrier to locate the signal of their cell phones so they could track their movements as fast as possible. 3 days passed without any leads until Saturday, June 18th, when officers discovered the abandoned vehicle along Nataliya Beach Road in Sekatoka. Their first observation was that the keys were still in the ignition. Inside, investigators located their cell phone, a passport, and clothing which matched the exact description and image of what Nataliya had worn in the photograph taken on the Thursday they were last seen. Instead of providing them with any answers, officers were faced with just more questions. Police spokesman Inspector Josiah Wakavu asked for the public's assistance in providing them with any information they had about the Russian couple. Some of the couple's family members and close friends also appealed to the public via social media for any news regarding their missing loved ones. Ala Malarich, in a Facebook post, stated that the couple had been missing for 3 days. She had called them several times, and even though their phones were still active, they were strangely not responding. Yuri Shipulin and Nataliya Gerasimova were Russian nationals who had relocated from Ryazan City, Russia, 5 years earlier. Ryazan City is located in central Russia and at the time had around 500,000 residents. The city was well known for being a scientific, industrial, and military hub of the country at the time. Yuri was a former pilot in the Russian Air Force, and the couple were very successful in business, although what kind of business they were involved in was unknown. Yuri and Nataliya were high school sweethearts, and they had fallen in love with the island when they first visited there years before. The couple decided that they wanted to build a new life in Fiji and eventually retire there. They sold all of their belongings in Russia and took a leap of faith. Yuri initially relocated to Fiji in 2009, attempting different types of work, which included setting up an aviation school, since Yuri was a former pilot. When things didn't pan out as hoped, he returned to Russia. The couple arrived in Fiji again in 2011, and Yuri Shipulin began to look into farming. He learned to garden and grew beautiful produce, including pumpkins, watermelons, and other kinds of fruits and vegetables, which he then sold to vendors and resorts at the local Nadi market. He had been running the farm in Fiji for the last 2 years. Yuri was also very passionate about photography, and according to many of his friends, he had a natural eye for capturing incredible pictures. Yuri Shipulin had pursued it as a side business and had worked for Nadi businesswoman Shafia Hassan as a wedding photographer. His friends, who included both Russian and English speakers, all said how the couple were soulmates. Yuri Shipulin was described as being a kind, warm, and open-hearted man who had not even a hint of aggression in him. Yuri loved living in Fiji and had big, hopeful plans for their future there together. Nataliya was also described as being warm and kind. A primary school teacher, she was loved by kids and adults alike on the island. According to an article by the Fiji Sun, who interviewed Mr. Lesonenko about the couple, they had been partying heavily, in particular drinking and smoking excessively in the few months leading up to their disappearance. Andrew Lesonenko pointed toward the number of empty bottles of liquor that stood on their veranda and how unkept and messy the house was. I find it strange and quite disrespectful how this man spoke of them in this manner. All they had done was allow him to work the farm while residing there with them, and in return, when they went missing, he painted the couple as if they were irresponsible and messed up, as if they were partially to blame. However, several of their friends and other neighbors disputed the article's suggestions that he had made that the couple had been on a boozing spree. They shared how the couple were lovely and had enjoyed a few glasses of wine with them together, but neither of them drank to excess, much less was it a factor in why they had gone missing. On June 24th, the next morning, a local fisherman came across a gruesome discovery along the beach. Inside a netting were a pair of feet. The man dropped the netting and contacted police immediately. 2 days later, another bundle floated to the edge of the water. Inside this netting were 2 more feet. This pair had its toenails painted. Could this be the missing couple? And if it was, who had killed them and mutilated their bodies? At this point, it was merely speculation. On June 29th, after human body parts washed ashore days before, law enforcement officially shut down the beach. After the gruesome discovery of their feet, the ACP enlisted the help of the Fiji Navy, which sent in a team of divers to search the waters. Then suddenly, the Fiji police force became tight-lipped regarding the alleged murders. Police Chief of Intelligence and Investigations ACP Luke Novella claimed that they had made this decision due to the highly sensitive nature of the investigation into their disappearance, and now possibly their homicides. Assistant Commissioner of Police Luke Novella also shut down the ongoing whispers that the crime was related to any gang involvement. He insisted that his department, along with the support and resources provided to them by the Republic of Fiji military forces and the Fiji Navy, in addition to their canine unit, were fully committed to finding the person or persons responsible for this heinous crime. The Fiji police also requested assistance from Interpol. They coordinated DNA samples from family members in Russia to be tested against the discovered body parts. Once the DNA tests from Yuri Shipulin's relatives back in Russia were analyzed, ACP Luke Novella made a statement to the media. On July 4th, he confirmed what everyone was dreading to hear, that the human body parts that had washed ashore belonged to the missing Russian couple. Graham and Jan Beckley from New Zealand were visiting Fiji to enjoy a rugby match and relax on the beaches together for the week. On the morning of August 3rd, while strolling along the beach, they observed a bundle floating in the water, which was around 3 feet deep. When the man brought it out of the sea, he noticed how it was alarmingly heavy. At the time, the couple joked with one another about how maybe the bundle contained more body parts, since they had read about the disappearance of the Russian couple there and about the feet that had recently washed ashore. When the man began to observe the shape of the bundle, he thought to himself, "This isn't looking good," and wisely decided against opening it. The couple contacted the police, who promptly arrived to investigate further. When an officer pulled off the nylon tie around the bundle, inside they saw a human head. Upon first sight, it was difficult to determine whether it was a male or female, since it had decomposed from the elements. DNA tests would later confirm that the head belonged to Yuri Shipulin. Nataliya Gerasimova's head was never found. Criminal investigators noticed distinct features that stood out amongst all 3 gruesome discoveries. They were all packaged in very similar ways. Both the pairs of feet and the head had been wrapped in a green netting with stones placed inside to weigh the parts down, and a similar blue-toned fishing line tied the wraps together. Upwards of 50 police officers scoured the couple's property and conducted a wide-reaching search across the farmlands. They performed an extensive search of the couple's property and their home, which was constructed of shipping containers. They looked for anything out of place, hoping that something would be found, anything at all, that could help lead the investigators to who had murdered the couple. The investigators unearthed very little helpful information, but it was reported that a chainsaw was missing from their farm. Then on September 20th, another human body part was discovered floating amongst the crystal blue waters. It was a shocking and grotesque sight. The body part was severed from below the navel and just above both knees. It was later identified to be a piece of Nataliya Gerasimova. Police Commissioner Brigadier General Desiree Gibbon stated to the press that the killings of Yuri, Shipulin, and Nataliya Gerasimova were some of the most brutal deaths in all of Fiji's history, and stressed how the team were devoted to solving these murders. Yuri's elderly mother, Valentina, was devastated by the loss of her son and disturbed about how little information the police provided her. There were many lingering questions and doubts about how Yuri's life was really in Fiji, what his business dealings were there, and who his business partners were. Alla Malarich, a fellow Russian who described herself as one of the couple's closest friends, had known them since 2011. She was very close to them both and specifically shared what a generous and dependable friend Yuri had been to her. He was the kind of person who would drop whatever he was doing to help her if her car broke down, and he was like that with anyone. Alla described him as being a happy, easygoing person who loved life, loved the island of Fiji, and was dedicated to building his life there with Nataliya. According to one of Yuri's closest friends, Michael Adams, who frequently barbecued with the couple, Yuri's main problem was that he could be overly generous with helping others out, in particular with money, and that he tended to be overly trusting of others. Yuri and Nataliya loved Fiji and saw it as their new home. They began taking language lessons from a Fijian woman and were well versed enough within a year to hold casual, fun conversations with the locals. The locals, most of whom were Fijian island natives, said they were both very friendly and there were never any issues between them and the couple. Their family and dearest friends were heartbroken and in shock over what a terrible, violent end Yuri and Nataliya had met. Rumors and speculation circulated within the community and were plastered across the media, placing the integrity of the investigation at risk. Residents and tourists alike were struck with fear of what may have happened to this nice older couple. There didn't seem to be any animosity toward either Yuri or Nataliya. It made no sense to anyone who would want them dead. 3 weeks after the couple's disappearance and deaths, a strange story was released. Early in the morning of June 17th, around 3 a.m., several security guards observed someone emerging from the beach. It appeared to be a very tall man whom they described as a ghostly figure. When they shined their torch upon the man as he walked past them, they were terrified of what they saw. The person was white from the hips up and black downwards. The men believed it was an evil entity, and so they did not follow this suspicious person. The men watched as this potential suspect walked down the dirt road away from the beach and into the dark. According to one of the security guards, Rapini Takavo, the man blocked his face with his cell phone when they shined the torch at him. A few hours before this incident, they saw someone with a torchlight heading out towards the deep waters. The ocean waves had been rough that night, and the security guard found it puzzling that someone would be so dumb to be swimming in it. After the murders hit the news, Mr. Takava realized that the two-tone person may have been wearing a wetsuit. Although there was no strong evidence that the ghostly figure was the couple's killer, some police officers did point out how the security men may have captured the murderer if they had approached this mysterious man. Speculation, rumors, and gossip have been widespread around the couple's murders. Alex Markman, a crime writer who is a close observer of the Russian mob, believes that the couple's deaths may have been a result of revenge. Similar types of mob killings have been performed by Russian organized crime. Mr. Markman thought that a local sect of the Russian mob was behind these ritual murders, but that it had nothing to do with their business affairs in Fiji. Based on the facts of the case, the couple may have been lured out by someone posing as a legitimate business person staying at one of the resorts nearby, when in fact this person was a contract killer sent in by the Russian mob. Alex Markman further speculated that if the couple had been in debt to former business partners in Russia, they may have left the country to hide in Fiji with the hopes that they would never be discovered. But they were. For the community surrounding the area where the Russian couple were murdered, their lives changed overnight. An occasional break-in may happen, but for the most part, the residents felt safe, and they had never encountered such a brutal crime on the island before. Families were on high alert, never experiencing the same peace or feeling of being protected, especially when night fell, as they once did. This was noted as being particularly true for the women and children. On April 14, 2017, after almost a year had passed after their murders, the police still had no real suspects, nor any strong leads. The Western Division Crime Stoppers put together a large cash reward for whoever could help the police lead to the identification of a suspect and subsequent arrest. But nothing ever came from the tips received. The police later stated, in an attempt to reassure the community and tourists, that Fiji was a safe and peaceful country, but that serious crime can occur there due to individuals being involved in criminal activities. What the police meant or were even implying by the statement regarding the murder of the Russian couple is unknown. Had they learned information about them that they were possibly involved in criminal activity, or was this simply their way of trying to ease the fears of the island's residents? Fiji has a very low rate of homicide. In 2020, there were approximately 2.17 cases of homicide per 100,000 residents reported. For comparison, the rate of homicide is 6.42 in the United States. However, similar to many other islands, its placement amongst the masses of open seas has made it a premier destination for drug trafficking. The drug market, specifically for cannabis, cocaine, and synthetic drugs, is the most prominent of the criminal markets in Fiji. The drug influx within the last decade has drastically increased crime there, and thus the chance of becoming a victim of violent crime has increased. Being situated between outsourcing countries in Latin America and destination nations such as Australia and New Zealand, Fiji has increasingly become a valuable transit hub for cocaine. Between 2009 and 2018, Fiji witnessed a significant increase in gang violence, and related arrests increased almost tenfold. What is unique about Fiji is that, unlike most other international drug trafficking, in particular for cocaine, where foreign actors are the ones in power, Fijian nationals control the domestic market. Fiji is also now one of the largest producers of cannabis in the Pacific, although most of its growth is for domestic use. Fiji gained its freedom from the United Kingdom in October 1970, so it is no surprise that its criminal justice system is based on the English common law, This includes a hierarchy of the judiciary, which includes the Supreme Court, the Court of Appeals, the High Court, and the Magistrates' Court, which handle both civil and criminal cases. However, the reality of the penal system does not live up to international standards, and there have been many serious violations and crimes reported. Not only do Fiji's prisons fail to meet basic conditions and suffer from overcrowding, lack of essential services, and poor infrastructure, but there have been many international reports about the smuggling of drugs, goods, and abuse of its inmates. Fiji has a transnational crime unit in charge of countering organized crime and a narcotics bureau, which is currently in the process of being established. However, law enforcement is severely underfunded. With its vast wetlands set amongst large mountains and endless seas, the islands are almost impossible to monitor and police. Another area of concern is how the islands allow visa-free entry to people from over 132 nations. Smaller criminal gangs on the island organize individuals to street rob, burgle, and pickpocket tourists, especially in the more popular towns. There is also the presence of motorcycle gangs with origins in Australia. The element of Asian organized crime can also be observed in Fiji's underworld of illegal gambling, prostitution, cybercrime, drug trafficking, and human trafficking for sexual exploitation. Reports from international observers have shown that low-level officials assist in human trafficking, primarily through the obstruction of criminal investigations, and drug trafficking is a major source of police corruption. One report done by FijiVillage.com reported that 28 officers have been charged with drug-related offenses between 2021 and 2023. Fiji may be extraordinarily beautiful, but the people are by no means wealthy. A 2019 to 2020 survey showed that 29.9% of its residents live below the national poverty line. In rural areas where basic access to clean water and health care is severely limited, the poverty rate is as high as 41%. One report revealed that of the 1,000 babies born in Fiji in 2023, 29 of them died before they turned 5 years old. The islands are dominated by young people, with a little more than 50% of its entire population being under the age of 25. Fiji is very dependent upon its steady tourism, being its largest foreign exchange earner, followed by sugarcane and clothing exports. Many people on the island struggle to get by, and for young police officers who are underpaid, as most of them are, the appeal of gaining extra by helping or looking the other way in the drug trade can be hard to ignore. Fiji is currently in the process of rebooting its police force in the hopes of gaining the people's trust and building back its integrity. Major General Ione Nataliya, the current minister of the Fijian police, made a promise to restore justice, service, and integrity to its country's law enforcement, with a 27% increase in crime in 2024 and a 26% increase in the first month of 2025. Drastic measures had to be introduced. These elements of Fiji are so relevant to this case because the high poverty rate combined with drug trafficking and police corruption undoubtedly affected this investigation. On the surface, it appears the Fiji police did everything within their power to find the culprit or culprits of this atrocious crime. Yet, there are many lingering doubts and questions surrounding this case, and what are known about any possible suspects. There were never any answer as to whom they even considered to be the offender. It is unknown if the Fijian police ever interrogated anyone or who they were intending to charge with their murders, who was then never charged. Although the beloved couple has been laid to rest, their loved ones, especially Yuri's mother, are still in desperate need of answers. Closure and peace can never come if they never know what happened to them and why. This second unsolved murder takes us to the rhythmic tropical island of Jamaica. Jamaica is the third largest island in the Caribbean Sea. It is 193 miles long and is located about 90 miles south of Cuba and 100 miles west of Haiti. Jamaica gained its freedom from the United Kingdom in 1962, but has remained a member of the Commonwealth, which is a group of countries who are historically connected to the British Empire. King Charles III to this day remains the head of state and the Jamaican monarch. Recent efforts have been made, however, for Jamaica to abolish its current government of a constitutional monarchy and transition into a republic. Jamaica may be the embodiment of a tropical lover's paradise, with lush mountains so high and majestic that they appear to touch the clouds, waves that resemble blue crystals floating in unison, mystical, gorgeous rainforests and rivers, cities that are full of art, live music, and British colonial architecture. The birthplace of reggae, and Kingston, its capital, is the home of the late legend Bob Marley. The island is all about natural beauty, history, and chilling out. Yet, this top global paradise destination boasts the highest murder rate in the world. Desiree Gibbon was a striking young woman, a gorgeous model and aspiring film director from Queens, New York. She was the daughter of a Jamaican native. Desiree had traveled to the island many summers to visit her father and grandmother who lived there. On October 20th, 2017, Desiree embarked on a month-long stay in Jamaica. While residing at her grandmother's bed and breakfast, the Gibbs Chateau, she was scouting out potential talent for a friend's new record label, as well as looking for a job there so she could save some money to attend film school in Europe. On Thanksgiving night, this talented and beautiful 26-year-old woman's life would tragically end. Her last movements are believed to be as follows. After enjoying a Thanksgiving dinner with her relatives, she left the hotel to go out for the night. At 11:22 p.m., surveillance video captured Desiree Gibbon wearing a t-shirt, shorts, pink flip-flops, and a bandana as she returned to the lobby of the hotel. Then, only 5 minutes later, she reappeared on camera, walking out the front door. According to the man behind the front desk, Desiree told him she would be right back. She had her U.S. operating iPhone with her when she left, but not her local phone. She turned left out of the gate, away from the security cameras, and into the night, never to be seen alive again. It was believed that Desiree Gibbon was lured away from the hotel to meet someone that night. On Sunday, November 26, 2017, in St. James Parish, Jamaica, a passerby was walking along the road, which was very overgrown with trees and shrubs, when they noticed something bizarre-looking sticking out from the bushes. Upon closer look, the person was shocked to see what appeared to be a young woman. She was blackened with bruises and covered in blood. When the island officers arrived on the scene, they did not see any signs of a sexual assault, as the woman was fully clothed. There were bruises on her hands, thighs, and all across her torso. They observed that the woman's throat had been slashed. When crime scene investigators searched the body, the victim did not have any ID or wallet on her person. She only had a key to a bed and breakfast, which was located several miles away from where her body was found. The woman had on only one pink sandal. The road where her body was discovered was rarely taken by tourists or residents. It was dark, isolated, and extremely overgrown, and its pathway led to a vacant home. Her mother, Andrea Callie Gibbon, flew to Jamaica immediately upon hearing the news from Desiree's father that their daughter was found dead. Together they went to the coroner to identify Desiree's body. It was reported how Andrea Gibbon commented that her daughter was not that black. This was, however, due to the severe discoloration of Desiree's face and body because of the extreme bruising she suffered and the beginning of livor mortis. Desiree's normally pinkish olive complexion had turned dark as coal. Desiree's parents were united in their search for answers. They walked along the desolate dirt road, 4 miles outside of Montego Bay, where their child's body was discovered. Her mother combed through the dense landscape, hoping to find the missing pink sandal, or anything that could help fuel the investigation. Her father tried to pinpoint the exact spot where his daughter's remains were found. It was particularly cold and disturbing to him that Desiree had left the bright lights of New York to end up dying on a dark, lonely road, terrified, alone, fighting for her life. Homicide investigators believe that Desiree knew the person or people who took her life. Desiree had socialized with many people in Montego Bay and had frequently visited the bars. According to interviews with individuals who were familiar with her, she had been hanging out with a man known as Rasta. This is the only clue as to who the man could be. It didn't seem very probable that the nickname Rasta in Jamaica was for one specific individual when it is the short-term name for its own culture. Who knows how many men referred to themselves as Rasta in Montego Bay, of all places? It almost feels as if whoever gave the police this piece of information was mocking them. Or was this the police's way of hoping that, in providing a name of a possible suspect to the family, it showed they were even feebly pursuing leads to identify their daughter's killer? Once she was in Jamaica and began conducting her own investigation, Desiree Gibbon was approached by someone who informed her of a man who had expressed interest in Desiree at a nightclub, but whom Desiree had turned down, albeit politely. After that transaction between her and the man, she was observed chatting with a group of men and women at the club. Her mother believes that Desiree's murder was premeditated. Desiree Gibbon thought that someone wanted her daughter to pay, maybe this man whom she rejected, and that her Desiree was lured into a trap. This is a story that some people believe happened, although it is still speculation. Whatever the motivations, her brutal murder indicated that it was personal. Jamaica is well known for people offering up information for money, so the details that were provided by people who allegedly knew Desiree while she was there had to be taken with a grain of salt, as they say. The police informed the parents that Desiree had trusted people who had turned on her. It felt as if the officers were attempting to place the blame on Desiree in some way, as if she had put herself in harm's way by hanging out with the wrong crowd. However, by all accounts, not only was she comfortable with the people and the culture in Jamaica, being that she was half Jamaican herself, but she was street smart, being brought up in New York. As her mother pointed out, Desiree was part of the community in Jamaica. Her immediate and extended family lived on the island. Within only a few weeks, she had created a new social circle and trusted these new people. She had been purposefully lured away from the security and safety of her room at the chateau that night. She was ambushed or led away and then assaulted, only to have her body dumped 4 miles away. It doesn't seem very plausible that one man grabbed her, threw her into a vehicle, and then got rid of her 4 miles down the road. It was very likely that more than one person was involved in her murder and the disposal of her body. As it was pointed out by Desiree's father, Gary Gibbon, only someone very familiar with the terrain where her body was found would have used it. I wonder if the police had even looked into who lived in the vicinity of the desolate road she was found on, or which individuals, if any, were known for hanging around there. It was noted that the path led to a vacant house. Was it an abandoned residence that people used as a drug house or vagrants slept in? Someone saw something that night. Someone is too scared to speak up, or law enforcement has covered up for the assailants. With little information, a lack of cooperation, negligence, and possible corruption at play in the investigation, Desiree Gibbon's mother saw no other choice but to return to the United States. In early December, Jamaican authorities stated they had identified a person of interest. but then no additional information was revealed. A few months passed with no movement on Desiree Gibbon's case when one day her aunt, Peggy Brunner, received a call, which only escalated the grim mystery surrounding her niece's death. As she was preparing dinner, her cell phone rang at 5:26 p.m. When she peered down at her phone, what she saw sent shivers throughout her body. It said Desi was calling. Desiree Gibbon's phone had never been found. When she picked up the phone, there was nothing but silence on the caller's end. She received another call again from Desi's phone 6 hours later, but missed the call. When she rang the number back, it said the phone was not working. More than a year after her daughter's death, Andrea Callie Gibbon was still requesting the pathology report. She finally received the details that no mother should ever read. Her daughter's grisly death was much worse than initially realized. Desiree had not merely had her throat slashed by her assailant. Her perpetrator had cut her so deeply that it severed her spine, essentially decapitating her. The report also revealed to Desiree's mother that DNA had been found on her daughter's body. One sample was male, and the other was female. The police told Andrea that a man and few women were brought in and questioned, and their DNA had been submitted for comparison. However, no one that was tested was a match. Andrea Callie Gibbon doesn't trust the little information that has been provided to her, and she doesn't doubt that the police just want it swept away. They just want her to go away, and they are doing their best to cover it all up. I also believe that the Jamaican police force is extremely overwhelmed with the sheer number of homicides, and they are ill-equipped and untrained to handle them properly, in addition to the embedded corruption within their police force. Jamaica's economy is hugely dependent upon tourism, even though they have the highest murder rates in the world. The parish where Desiree Gibbon's body was discovered reported more than 350 homicides in 2017, with the majority of them being near Montego Bay, which is the most popular destination spot in all of Jamaica. The murder rate in Jamaica saw a 10% jump from 2020 to 2021, with a murder rate of 52.3 per 100,000 residents. Jamaica has a relatively small population with around 180,000 people. In 2024, the murder rate decreased by about 10%, falling to 40.1, but it is still the highest homicide rate in all the world. The escalating homicide rates have been attributed to what can only be deemed as an ironic effect of security force crackdown. In the effort to combat the violent and intrusive Jamaican posses or gangs that have taken over the island, there has been a huge increase in violence. Similar to the drug cartels in Mexico, violent criminal gangs have exerted authority, power, and fear over the people of Jamaica for decades. Ever since 2010, when the person known as being the biggest don on the island was arrested, also known as Christophe Dudas Cook, the country has seen an explosive outbreak of violence. The operation that detained him led to a bloody war between the criminal gangs and the state forces. As a result, the government of Jamaica and the communities distanced themselves from the posse, who in reaction transformed themselves. The main gang broke out into other factions and went in different directions. Initially, this made them vulnerable to law enforcement, and the homicide rate fell from a record high of 62 per 100,000 residents in 2009 to 36 in 2014. External factors also impacted these gangs, specifically in the area of transnational drug trafficking, especially regarding the demand for marijuana, with the United States, as an example, producing equally, if not better, quality. This forced the gangs to venture into new opportunities, which manifested into the lottery scams that are now known as being their biggest source of illegal income. These lottery scams have set off wars between rival criminal posses, which have resulted in homicide rates surging again within the last decades, with many civilians, including entire families, becoming their target of violence. The Jamaica Constabulary Force, also known as JCF, is the national police force of Jamaica, and according to public surveys, they are perceived as having very high levels of corruption. This has led to much strife and distrust between its citizens and officers of the law. The United States has been a factor in helping increase their professionalism and the integrity of its police force. Through the Caribbean Basin Security Initiative, aka CBSI, the U.S. Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs has helped to enhance its ability to investigate and prosecute and fight corruption within Jamaica's law enforcement. Jamaica is heavily reliant upon two major sources of income, one being tourism and the other financial services. The island nation itself is low on productivity and has been slow to expand and diversify. When the pandemic slowed down and international travel began to boom again, Jamaica was one of the most positively impacted destinations. In 2023, it welcomed 4.1 million tourists, which was a 25.5% increase from the year before. It set a new record in the first 5 months of 2024, bringing in 2 million tourists. By the end of 2024, the island had generated $1.9 billion, and it is expected to bring in nearly $5 billion by 2025. As a result, the citizens of Jamaica have had their lives richly improved. The nation broke its own record, declaring the lowest level of poverty ever in 2023 at 8.2%, which was less than half of the rate only a few years before. Interestingly, the United States was Jamaica's top trading partner, and the mutual trading of goods between the countries was over $3 billion in 2023, thanks largely in part to the Caribbean Basin Trade Partnership Act, which grants duty-free status to over 80% of Jamaican exports. Business relations between the two nations are particularly strong. The FBI has a clear presence and impact in Jamaica as well. On the island is a sub-office to the FBI legal attaché based out of Santo Domingo. Now, they don't have an overreach, nor do they have higher authority than local police. Rather, they exist to enlist the help of the Jamaican police force in domestic FBI investigations and solving serious U.S. crime. Its mission in Jamaica is to cooperate with their authorities in crimes that threaten the interests of the United States. The FBI's main purpose is to help train the island police in areas where they are in great need of development, such as forensics, cybersecurity, and identifying terrorist networks. The aforementioned lottery scams have been a particular area of international investigation and collaboration, since they directly target U.S. citizens. This positive connection, mutual interest, and collaborative efforts shown between the United States and Jamaica make the lack of investment to solve this young woman's murder even more unsettling. Desiree Gibbon's family has been faced with nothing but questions regarding their daughter's murder. Struck with obstacles and a lack of transparency provided by the Jamaican police force, they reached out to the American embassy. Unfortunately, due to their lack of jurisdiction on the island, they can only assist if the Jamaican police has specifically requested their help with the investigation, which they never have. In response to the frustrating obstacles she and her family have faced with issues of jurisdiction, Nataliya Gibbon has initiated new legislation, named after her beloved daughter, Desi's Law. This would give U.S. law enforcement the power to get involved in homicide cases when the victims are American citizens. Although this is a worthy cause, and I sincerely sympathize with what her family is enduring, unfortunately, this kind of legislation will never happen. These kind of laws would hinder the rights and laws of other countries, which the United States does not and should not have the power to do. That could be considered a severe violation of trust and respect toward any nation. Murders that occur on an island lie within the jurisdiction of the country that has control over its lands and the waters within its territory. For example, since Puerto Rico or Guam are both U.S. territories, if a murder occurs on these islands, then they would fall under U.S. jurisdiction for federal cases. But if the homicide is considered at a state or local level, then they would handle it under their specific jurisdiction or division there. For islands outside of Hawaii and Alaska or other U.S. territories, there is no authority the United States has to intervene and can only be involved if officially requested by the other nation. Now, if the homicide happened in international waters, then this is an altogether different matter. Jurisdiction would then fall under the country where the vessel is registered or the flag, and may also take into consideration the nationality of the individual. There is also an exception to the rule established under the Special Maritime and Territorial Jurisdiction of the United States. Under this particular legislation, the United States is permitted federal jurisdiction when a serious, particularly a violent crime involving a U.S. national occurs outside its jurisdiction of any nation. This empowers U.S. federal authorities such as the Coast Guard and the Department of Justice to investigate and prosecute crimes. It is a complex situation that must be handled very carefully so as not to violate international treaties and agreements made with specific countries. This law would encompass U.S. vessels, U.S. military bases, and any other areas under U.S. control. However, this does not apply to islands, no matter how small or remote, unless, again, the United States has a military base or control over a location there. It is not an easy fact to hear, nor openly accept these laws, but one country or nation can't insert itself into another country's investigation, regardless of the victim's nationality. That is not how criminal jurisdiction and authority works. It is neither always practical nor efficient, and it frequently makes solving crimes more challenging and sometimes next to impossible to solve. But there are good reasons behind it. If there wasn't some order of authority and power in who solves crime, it would be pure chaos. Even though Desiree Gibbon's family has been met with little help from the Jamaican Constabulary force, many people on the island are invested in helping find her killer. A Crime Stoppers show in Jamaica featured Desiree Gibbon's case with a reward offered, but no one ever came forward with information, although the police had claimed they had a suspect in her murder. An arrest was never made, and no further leads have ever been released. The fight for justice for Desiree Gibbon marches on, and the family has since sought out the assistance of private investigator T.J. Ward. This is the same man who was the private investigator for the Holloway family when their daughter Natalie went missing and was presumed murdered on the island of Aruba. In 2018, Desiree Gibbon's family reached out to him to help find who was responsible for what happened to their daughter. Private investigator T.J. Ward has quoted the family needing $25,000 in order for him to go to Jamaica to begin an investigation. If anyone is interested in helping fund this family's quest, the show notes will have contact information for their GoFundMe page. Desiree Gibbon had dreams of attending film school in Europe and was working on the island so she could save up to make that dream a near reality. She had already traveled to many countries around the world. She wanted to experience and soak up every culture imaginable. Desiree Gibbon had planned on returning to Queens, New York 4 days after she was killed. When discussing her to the press, Desiree Gibbon's mother heartbreakingly reflects on the gift her daughter was to her and to everyone who knew and loved her. She said, and I quote, "I've realized that I was extremely blessed to be her mother. I realized she didn't belong only to me or my husband or her sisters. She belongs to everybody. According to her best friend Angelina Papanicolaou's blog, written after her tragic death, Desiree Gibbon was fearless, confident, knew what she wanted out of life, and always hoped to leave her mark on the world. She wanted to make a positive impact. Desiree Gibbon was, in her friend's own words, better than us, and I cannot stress this enough. She was and always will be my role model. She wanted to change the world for the better. She was my best friend. And death does not defeat love. Angelina Papanicolaou was beyond heartbroken to lose her best friend Desiree, and she is enraged that her murderer or murderers have not been brought to justice. Desiree Gibbon was a beautiful young woman in every way. She was kind and full of that vibrant light that people remember. Desiree and her family deserve justice. The governments of Jamaica, Fiji, and other island nations, along with those who hold interest in the name of tourism, have carefully crafted images of these tropical island escapes to lure in visitors from around the world under the guise that they are safe, when in fact, no one is. Thank you so much for listening to these intriguing and tragic tales of murder in paradise. What are your thoughts on these murder mysteries? Do you have any possible suspects? And what could be their motivations in committing these horrific crimes? Do you believe the truth is being covered up by law enforcement officers? Or are they just incompetent, not properly trained, and underskilled? Or rather, do they just not care enough to solve these people's deaths? If you have any thoughts, questions, comments, or ideas for future episodes, please reach out. I would love to hear from you. If you enjoy the show and would like to support it, please make sure that you are following or subscribed on your platform listening of choice. If you are on the Spotify app, you can simply swipe up and leave comments, or you can head to the About section and leave a review. Thank you so much once again. Until next time, stay safe. And watch out for shades of murder happening in the streets next door, especially inside your own home. Shades of Murder is created, researched, written, and edited by Alita Caldwell. Original music Stranger, composed by Stereo Code.